I want to start with a scenario that I think, well, it's probably going to annoy a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
because it's so familiar.
Okay, I'm ready.
You have that one habit, right?
Hmm.
Maybe it's a temper, maybe it's just endlessly scrolling on your phone, maybe it's something, darker,
Mm.
and you decide, that's it, I'm done. You grit your teeth, you make a promise, and for like 3 days, you are a champion.
The first 72 hours are always the best.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then day 4 hits. You're tired, you're stressed, and before you even realize what's happening, you are right back where you started.
It's the cycle of defeat. And it's probably one of the most universal feelings there is. We have these high ideals, but we seem to lack the hardware to actually pull it off long term.
Right. And the usual advice is just try harder.
Yeah.
Just have more willpower. But we're looking at this month's topic, focusing on week 3, which covers Romans chapter 6, verses 1 through 14.
Right.
And honestly, I read through this, and on the surface, it seems to be saying something that feels almost impossible.
Impossible how?
Well, the text says that if you're a believer, you are dead to sin. Dead. But if I'm being honest, and I think if you're listening and you're being honest, we don't feel dead to sin.
Not at all.
Sin looks very alive. It can look attractive. It feels powerful.
Right.
So is Paul just being metaphorical here? Is this just, pretty poetry?
And that really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Because if this is just poetry, then we're all in trouble. Poetry doesn't break addiction.
No.
But Paul is doing something incredibly specific here. He's not describing a feeling. He's describing a change in your legal and your spiritual status.
Okay, unpack that for me. Because status sounds like paperwork, and paperwork doesn't stop me from losing my temper when I'm stressed.
Well, think of it this way. Paul starts this whole section by addressing a rumor. He asks this question: shall we go on sinning so that grace may increase?
Right.
There's this idea floating around that if God's grace is infinite, well, then our sin just gives God more opportunities to show off how forgiving he is.
It's like the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card.
Yeah.
If the bill's already paid, why worry about the cost?
Exactly. But Paul doesn't say, oh, that's against the rules. He says, by no means. Or in some translations, God forbid.
That's a very strong reaction.
It is. And then he drops this bombshell. We are those who have died to sin. How can we live in it any longer? He's arguing from a place of identity, not just behavior.
So it's not what you do, it's who you are.
It's who you are. You can't live in a house you've already moved out of.
But that's my point. I feel like I haven't moved out. I feel like I still show up to the office of sin every morning.
And that is where the theology of Romans 6 gets so powerful. It all centers on this concept of our union with Christ. Paul uses this illustration of baptism.
Okay.
Now, most of us think of baptism as, a nice ceremony. We take pictures, grandma cries, we all go to lunch.
It's a milestone, a rite of passage.
Sure, but for Paul, in this context, it's a funeral. He says when you were baptized into Christ, you were baptized into his death. That little word into is everything. It means you were literally submerged into the reality of what happened to Jesus.
So the water, it's not a bath, it's a grave.
It is a watery grave. The old you, the version of you that was obligated to sin, the version that was enslaved to those impulses, that person went into the ground with Jesus. That timeline ended. It flatlined.
Okay, I'm following the logic. The old me is buried. But obviously, I didn't stay underwater. I came back up.
Right. And just as Christ was raised from the dead, we too may live a new life. But here's the nuance that we're often miss. It's not just new as in,
A
refurbished.
slightly better version.
No, the Greek here implies a whole new quality of life, a kind of life that didn't exist for you before. It's resurrection life.
You're saying the engine running my life now isn't just my own willpower?
It's the same power that brought Jesus out of the tomb.
Okay, hang on. I want to push back on this a little because that sounds fantastic on a Sunday morning. But if I have resurrection power in my DNA, why is it still such a struggle?
Yeah.
If I'm dead to sin, why do I have to fight it? Dead people don't fight.
And that is where the rubber meets the road. Paul isn't saying the presence of sin is gone. He's saying your obligation to it is gone.
Obligation.
Think about it from their perspective. In the Roman Empire, slavery was everywhere. This idea would have hit them hard. Imagine a slave who has been legally purchased by a new, kind master.
Okay.
The transaction is done. The papers are signed. He is legally free from that old, cruel master.
Okay, legally free. I get that.
But he's lived in that old master's house his whole life. He knows the routine. He knows the sound of his voice. If the old master shouts a command from across the street,
He's going to flinch. He might even start to obey out of instinct.
he'll flinch. He'll turn. Not because he has to, but because he's conditioned to.
That actually makes so much sense. The old master sin is still yelling at us, hey, you're anxious. Do that thing you always do. And we flinch.
We flinch, but the truth, the deep reality here, is that we don't have to obey anymore. And this leads us to the most technical, but maybe the most important part of this whole chapter. Verse 11.
In the same way, count yourselves dead to sin, but alive to God.
That word count, or in older translations, you'll see reckon.
Right, reckon.
It's from the Greek word logizomai. And this is huge. It's an accounting term.
An accounting term, so not an emotional one.
Not at all. It means to calculate a numerical reality. It doesn't mean pretend or try to imagine. It means do the math.
It's like balancing a checkbook.
Exactly. If you look at your bank account and it says you have $1 million, but you feel poor, your feelings are irrelevant to the fact. You can spend the money because it's there.
Okay.
Paul is saying, do the math. Look at the cross, look at the empty tomb, calculate your position. You are, as a matter of spiritual fact, dead to that old obligation.
So the problem isn't that the power isn't there. The problem is that I'm bad at math. I'm calculating based on my feelings. I feel tempted, so I must be a slave instead of the facts.
Yes. You're operating on old data. You're like a prisoner who's been pardoned, the cell door is wide open, the guards are gone, but you're still sitting on the cot because that's all you've ever known.
That's a terrifying thought,
Yeah.
that we could stay in chains just because we don't believe the door is actually open.
And that's why the enemy's greatest weapon isn't forcing you to sin. He can't, actually. His weapon is the lie. He just whispers, you haven't really changed. You're the same old person. You might as well give in.
And if you agree with that lie, you give it power.
You empower it.
Yeah.
But if you do the logizomai, you look at that temptation and you say, wait a minute, that's not my master anymore. I don't have to answer that call.
Okay, so we've got the status change, dead to sin. We have the mental shift, reckoning it to be true. But let's get into the mechanics. Paul moves from this high theology to some very gritty commands in verse 12.
He does.
Do not let sin reign in your mortal body.
This is so crucial. Theologians call it the indicative and the imperative. The indicative is the fact of who you are. You are dead to sin.
Okay.
The imperative is the command based on that fact. Therefore, do not let it reign.
Do not let. That phrase implies I have control. I have a say in the matter.
It implies you are the gatekeeper. Paul would not command you to do something if you didn't have the capacity to do it. He's admitting that sin is going to try to set up a puppet government in your life. It wants to reign. But you have veto power.
I love that image. Veto power. So when that urge hits, I'm not some helpless victim. I'm a ruler who can say access denied.
And then he gets very physical. He talks about our members, our body parts. Do not offer any part of yourself to sin as an instrument of wickedness.
Interesting, he focuses on the body. We think of sin as this abstract spiritual thing, but he's talking about hands and eyes and your mouth.
Because that's where sin happens. It's enacted through the body. I mean, think about it. If you struggle with gossip, your instrument is your tongue. If it's lust, it's your eyes.
Right.
So this word offer, it suggests an active presentation, like you're waking up in the morning and handing over the keys to your car.
Who am I giving the keys to today?
Yes. And the counter command is to offer yourselves to God and offer every part of yourself to him as an instrument of righteousness. That word instrument can also be translated as weapon.
Oh, I like that much better.
I
So
like-
my mouth isn't just a tool, it's a weapon for good.
Exactly. So let's make this super practical. You wake up. Instead of just stumbling into your day, you consciously say, God, my eyes are yours today. I'm going to use them to see people the way you do. My hands are yours. I'm going to use them to serve. You actively enlist your body in God's service.
It's a lot harder to gossip when you've already dedicated your tongue to encouragement for the day. You've sort of pre-booked the venue.
You've pre-booked it. You're displacing the opportunity for sin. And this brings us to the final piece, which is the how. Because willpower fades, we get tired.
That's my crash point.
Yeah.
3 p.m., low blood sugar, a bad email. My willpower is gone.
And that's why this all points to the Holy Spirit. Romans 8:11 says the same Spirit who raised Jesus from the dead is living in you. This isn't just a nice thought. This is about a power source.
This is the difference between trying to push a car up a hill
Yes,
and actually getting in and turning on the ignition.
that's it.
Yeah.
Walking by the Spirit means leaning into that engine. When you feel that flinch we talked about, you don't just grit your teeth. You stop and you acknowledge his presence. Holy Spirit, I'm weak right now. Remind me of the truth. Live this moment through me.
That's an active reliance, not passive hope.
It's extremely active, and that's what grace is. Verse 14 says, sin shall no longer be your master because you are not under the law, but under grace.
Yeah.
Law demands righteousness, but gives you no power. Grace gives you a new identity as righteous, and then it gives you the power to walk it out.
That changes everything about the struggle. It's not me against the world anymore. It's me standing in a victory that's already been won.
The war is over. You're just clearing out the last pockets of resistance.
So as we start to land the plane here, I want to challenge everyone listening, and myself really, to stop treating this like a nice theory. Let's run an experiment.
An experiment. I like it.
Well, based on everything we've said, the first step is that reckoning, that calculation. I think a lot of us walk around with a false ID. We say, I'm a sinner saved by grace.
Which is true, but it keeps the emphasis on sinner. It creates an expectation of failure.
It does. So the challenge is this. Flip the script. When you feel that temptation, instead of thinking, oh no, here I go again, I want you to literally speak out loud. Declare your legal status.
Use the words from the text. Say, I am dead to this. This habit belongs to a dead person, and I am alive to God.
There's something so powerful about hearing your own voice declare that truth. It breaks the enemy's lie.
It does. And combine that with the offering we talked about. Don't just resist the bad thing. Actively pursue the good thing. If you're tempted to be selfish, immediately go find a way to be generous. Break the pattern.
Right. Replace the habit. Don't just create a vacuum. Fill it with something better.
And remember, through all of this, you are not doing it alone. You have the resident power of the resurrection inside you. That is not a metaphor. That's your reality.
I'll leave you with this one thought that really hit me as we were preparing. If you truly believed, 100% calculated as a fact, that the old, broken, addicted version of you was dead and buried, how would you walk into your house tonight? How would you approach that stressful meeting tomorrow?
You wouldn't walk in afraid. You'd walk in free.
That's the offer on the table. The door is open. The chains are cut. It's time to stop sitting in the cell.
Walk in the newness of life. It's yours for the taking.
Thanks for exploring this with us. We'll talk to you next time.